Black smoke coiled into the desert sky, thick and oily, twisting under the brutal afternoon sun like a wounded serpent. Eliza Crow pressed her cheek to the wooden floor of her family's general store, splinters biting into her skin as another burst of gunfire blew out the windows above her. Shards of glass poured down like frozen rain, mingling with the sharp stink of gunpowder and burning pine. "Stay down, Eliza," her father shouted, his voice cracking through the chaos. When she lifted her head, her heart dropped. Abram Crow lay slumped against the counter, his white shirt blooming red across his chest. His Winchester rested uselessly beside him, one hand still reaching for it. Apache war cries ripped through the air, high, piercing and wild, sending ice through her veins. She had heard whispers at the trading post, stories of raids and slaughter. But none of them had prepared her for this. Hooves thundered around the small settlement of Bitter Creek like circling vultures, kicking up dust that bled through the smoke drifting beneath the floorboards. Eliza saw her neighbor, Ruth Calder, bolt toward the church. An arrow struck her between the shoulders, and she collapsed in the street, lifeless. Her bonnet tumbled away in the wind, pale hair spilling across the dirt. Eliza's hands shook as she crawled toward her father. "Papa." The word barely escaped her throat. His eyes stared past her, already clouded, fixed on something she could no longer reach. She pressed her palm to the wound, but blood slipped through her fingers, hot and slick. Then the front door blasted inward. 3 Apache warriors stormed inside, faces painted in harsh streaks of black and red. Their leader was tall and lean, scars cutting across his bare chest like a map of old violence. His dark eyes swept the room, missing nothing. He barked a command in his language, and the others tore through the store, yanking shelves down, spilling flour and beans across the floor. Eliza scrambled back until her spine hit the wall. The scarred warrior approached, his moccasins silent against the boards. Up close, she saw the notches carved into his rifle stock. Each mark a life ended. He studied her the way a man inspects livestock. "Please," she whispered, her throat dry as dust. "I have nothing." He seized her wrist and hauled her upright with brutal strength, his grip iron hard. Eliza fought him, but it was useless. He dragged her toward the door, past her father's body, past the overturned barrels and shattered goods that had once been their livelihood. Outside, Bitter Creek burned. The church steeple collapsed in a shower of sparks, the bell crashing down, the same bell that had called them to service only 3 days earlier. Bodies lay scattered along the street, people she had known all her life, reduced to still shapes in the dirt. The warriors moved through the wreckage with practiced ease, claiming horses, weapons, anything worth taking. Eliza was shoved toward a paint pony, its sides slick with sweat. The scarred warrior mounted behind her, one arm locking around her waist like a vice. She smelled smoke, sweat, and something raw, sage and earth. As they rode away from the burning settlement, she caught one final glimpse of her home, now just another pillar of smoke clawing into the vast Arizona sky. They rode hard through afternoon and into night, nearly 20 warriors and their captives. Eliza was not alone. She recognized Mabel Knox, the baker's daughter, slung over another horse, and young Cole Knox, no more than 12. His face streaked with dirt and tears. As the hours dragged on, Eliza focused only on staying awake, on not slipping from the saddle as pain tore through her body. The land shifted from scrub and sand to stone and canyon, flat plains rising into jagged ridges. They followed trails she could not see, guided by an ancient understanding of the land. When they finally stopped at a hidden spring, Eliza's legs collapsed beneath her. She crawled toward the water, drinking desperately, until a warrior yanked her back by the hair. He snapped something in Apache, and the others laughed. a harsh, cutting sound. A younger warrior, his face freshly painted, stepped forward with a strip of rawhide. Eliza's wrists were bound tight, the leather biting into her skin. She was given a small piece of dried meat and a single swallow from a water gourd. Nothing more. As dawn crept over the mountains, painting the rocks in blood and gold, they climbed deeper into Apache land. The air turned thin and cold. Eliza's dress, once her best, hung in shreds, torn by thorns and soaked with sweat and fear. Blood seeped through her boots, every step a fresh wave of agony. The other captives suffered just as badly. Mabel hadn't spoken since Bitter Creek, her eyes empty, glassy. Cole whimpered now and then, but he had learned that crying only earned sharp words and rough blows. Eliza wanted to reach for them, to offer comfort, but she had nothing left inside her to give. Any words she might have spoken would have sounded empty against the weight of what they had lost. By the second night, they reached the war camp, a cluster of low wickiups tucked deep in a narrow valley, stone cliffs rising on both sides like prison walls. Smoke from cook fires drifted upward in thin ribbons, carrying the scent of meat and ash. Eliza could see women and children moving between the rounded shelters, their shapes passing in and out of the firelight. Dogs barked at their arrival, and faces appeared in doorways, some curious, some openly hostile. The scarred warrior dismounted and dragged Eliza down after him. Her legs folded beneath her, muscles seized from the endless ride. He didn't wait for her to stand. He hauled her forward, pulling her through the camp as warriors called out to him. Their voices carried respect and something sharper. Deference, perhaps, even fear. Eliza lifted her chin, forcing herself upright despite the pain. Apache women watched her pass, their expressions unreadable. Some spat into the dirt, others simply stared, measuring her pale skin, her tangled auburn hair. She held their gaze as best she could, trying to summon defiance while terror pressed hard against her chest. They stopped before a larger wickie upset apart from the rest. The scarred warrior called out, and an elderly woman stepped into the light, her face carved with deep lines and long sorrow. The woman inspected Eliza like a trader judging livestock, rough fingers combing through her hair, lifting her lips to check her teeth, pressing along her arms and ribs. Whatever she decided, she gave a short nod and motioned toward a smaller shelter nearby. Eliza was shoved inside, where Mabel Knox and two other captured women were already huddled. The space reeked of smoke and cured hide, barely enough room for them all. Through the entrance, Eliza could see guards posted outside, rifles catching the glow of the fire. "What will they do to us?" Mabel whispered at last, her voice thin and shaking. Eliza drew the younger woman close, feeling her tremble. Outside, drums began to beat, slow and heavy, a rhythm that echoed the pounding of Eliza's own heart. She said nothing. She couldn't bring herself to speak the thought they all shared, that death might be the mercy waiting for them in this valley of stone and shadow. The drums carried on through the night. Eliza stared up at the smoke hole, watching stars turn overhead, distant and uncaring. She thought of her father's final breath, of her mother's grave behind the church that no longer stood, of a life erased by fire and blood less than 2 days ago. Tomorrow would bring something worse, she knew it, but tonight she was alive. Bruised, broken, terrified, but alive. And deep beneath the fear, a small ember of resolve refused to go out. Whatever the Apache intended for her, she would not submit quietly. She would not disgrace Abram Crow's memory by surrendering to despair. As dawn crept closer, the drums faded, and exhaustion finally pulled her into a restless sleep. Her last thought was a prayer, not for rescue, but for strength. If she was meant to die in these mountains, she would meet it standing, with the courage her father had tried to teach her. Wind howled through the canyon like a restless spirit as Eliza Crow closed her eyes, waiting for whatever the sunrise would bring. Morning light struck the canyon walls like hammered copper. Eliza woke to the sound of women's voices and the clatter of clay pots. Through the entrance, she watched the camp stir. Children chasing dogs, women tending fires, the steady rhythm of daily life that felt unreal in a place of captivity. A middle-aged Apache woman entered their shelter, gray threaded through her tightly bound hair. She gestured sharply. Eliza understood without words. They were to move. Mabel clutched her arm as they stepped into the light, blinking against the sun. The other captives, Ruth Calder and Lorna Pike, stayed close as they were herded toward the center of camp. Eliza studied the people around them as they walked. They were not the monsters of frontier stories. They were families. Children peered out from behind skirts, curious but wary. An old man sat shaping arrowheads with steady, practiced hands. That ordinariness made everything feel stranger. They were led before a semicircle of elders, faces worn like sun-cracked leather. At the center sat a silver-haired man whose presence demanded attention without effort. Iron Fox, his eyes heavy with years of war and loss. He spoke at length in Apache, his voice calm but absolute. The scarred warrior stood nearby, arms crossed. When the elder finished, he gestured toward each captive in turn, speaking quickly. Eliza caught one word repeated, Rook. Murmurs passed among the elders. Some shook their heads, others nodded. Then Iron Fox lifted his hand, and silence fell. He addressed Eliza directly, his English rough but clear. You are strong. You do not break like others. His gaze held her. That is why you were chosen. Chosen for what? Eliza asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Iron Fox's expression did not change. Our greatest warrior is dying. No Apache woman may witness his weakness. It is forbidden, the elder said flatly. Then he waved a dismissive hand toward her. But you... His eyes hardened. You are nothing. You may tend him without breaking sacred law. The words drained the color from Eliza Crow's face. I'm not a healer. That does not matter. His voice held no cruelty, only certainty. You learn or you die. He turned his gaze briefly toward Mabel Knox and the remaining captives. This is mercy. The others become slaves. Or wives, if fortune favors them. A pause. You have another purpose. The scarred warrior seized Eliza's arm again. Before he could drag her away, she forced her voice free. What about them? The others? The elder's expression did not shift. Their fate is not yours. Eliza was pulled away as Mabel cried her name, the sound slicing through her chest. She fought the urge to resist, knowing it would only earn her pain. The warrior's grip did not loosen. They crossed the camp toward a wiki upset apart from the rest. Larger, its hide painted with symbols she could not read. Spirals and lightning marks, horses and human figures locked in endless motion. A thick buffalo hide covered the entrance. The warrior called out. A reply came from inside, deep, rasped, roughened by pain. They stepped in. Eliza's eyes adjusted slowly. The smell struck her first. Crushed herbs, smoke, sweat, and beneath it all, the sickly sweetness of rot. Then she saw him, and her breath stalled. Even lying still, he was enormous. His body stretched across the buffalo robes, powerful despite its stillness, scarred beyond counting. Knife slashes, bullet wounds, burn marks raised and pale. His chest rose unevenly, sweat slicking skin the color of weathered bronze. But it was his face that held her. Strong, sharp lines as if carved from stone. A jaw that looked unbreakable. Black hair spilled across the hides like ink. When his eyes opened, fever bright yet keen as obsidian, they locked onto her. "So," he said in clear, unaccented English, "they've sent me a white woman to watch me die." The scarred warrior spoke quickly in Apache, pointing toward Eliza. Rook, for there was no mistaking the legendary warrior, listened without breaking his stare. When the warrior finished, Rook laughed, low and distant, until the sound broke into a harsh cough. Blood dotted his lips. "Leave us," Rook ordered in Apache. The warrior hesitated, then inclined his head and withdrew. Eliza remained near the entrance, suddenly aware they were alone. The wiki-up felt smaller, crowded by his presence despite his weakness. Now she saw the wound clearly, a deep gash along his ribs, swollen and angry, red veins spreading outward like poison. "Come closer, little rabbit," Rook said, switching back to English. "I won't bite. I lack the strength for it." "I told them I'm no healer," Eliza said, holding her ground. "No," he replied, shifting with a wince. "But you have hands, and you can follow instruction." He let out a slow breath. "Unless you'd rather rejoin your friends. I hear Brack has taken an interest in the young one." The threat, spoken without heat, made Eliza's fingers curl. She stepped forward, lifting her chin. "What do you want me to do?" "There's water in the gourd, cloth in the basket. Clean the wound. Replace the poultice." His eyes closed. "And try not to faint at the sight of blood, white woman." Eliza gathered the supplies, anger tightening her movements. When she knelt beside him, she saw how bad it truly was. The wound was deep and torn, the flesh swollen and hot to the touch. Herbs had been packed into it, but they were stale, long overdue for changing. She worked carefully, thorough despite herself. Each time the cloth brushed the infected skin, his muscles tightened beneath her hands. But he did not cry out. This close, she noticed things that made him less myth and more man. A thin scar splitting one eyebrow, faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw locked down against pain. "You are not like the others," he said suddenly, eyes still closed. "How would you know?" "Because you are angry." A faint curve touched his mouth. "Not afraid. Fear is useless. Anger can be shaped." Eliza said nothing. The infection ran deep. She wondered if even a trained doctor could save him. Her attention drifted again to the scars, so many of them. Each one a record of violence survived. Without thinking, her fingers traced a long slash across his chest. His hand snapped up, closing around her wrist. His eyes opened, dark, unreadable. "Curiosity kills white women," he said quietly. "You are burning with fever." "So are you," Eliza replied, refusing to flinch beneath his grip. "And this wound is killing you." Rook released her slowly. "Everything dies." He let go of her wrist. "Some just take longer than others." Eliza finished cleaning the wound and mixed a fresh poultice from the remaining herbs in the basket. As she worked, she felt his attention on her, sharp and deliberate, as if he were memorizing every movement. It unsettled her, like being watched by a wolf that had decided not to strike. "What's your name?" he asked while she secured the new dressing. "Eliza Crow." "Eliza." He turned the name slowly in his mouth. "In your people's tongue, it means light." His eyes stayed on her face. "Are you light, Eliza Crow?" "Bright enough to know this wound needs more than herbs and prayers." He chuckled, quieter this time. You speak without fear. That will either keep you alive here, he said, or get you killed. And which do you think it'll be? She asked. Rook studied her for a long moment. That depends on you, little rabbit. Then, after a pause, and maybe on me, if I live long enough to matter. A woman entered the wiki up then, elderly and stooped, but moving with sharp purpose. She spoke harshly to Rook in Apache, clearly displeased to find Eliza there. He answered in the same language, his voice firm despite his weakness. The woman snorted, but set down a pot that smelled of boiled roots and meat. She turned to Eliza and switched to broken English. Twice a day. You come, clean, feed, no talk to others. Her eyes hardened. You see his weakness, you die. Understand? Eliza nodded. The woman left, muttering under her breath. She's warm, Eliza said lightly, surprising herself. That's Moha, Rook replied. She believes I should have died loud and glorious in battle instead of rotting like this. A trace of bitterness crept into his voice. She's probably right. Eliza poured some broth into a smaller bowl. When she moved to help him sit, he waved her off and forced himself upright. Pride, she realized. Even now, he would not accept help he didn't have to. As he ate slowly, she studied the wiki up. Weapons hung from the support poles, a rifle, a bow, a feathered lance. She noticed the scalps and looked away. This was a warrior's dwelling. Every object spoke of blood earned and blood spilled. You think you've been locked in here with a monster? Rook said, setting the bowl aside. Haven't I? Maybe. He eased himself back down, exhaustion pulling at him. But remember this, little rabbit. Monsters are made, not born. And sometimes, they're the only thing standing between their people and being erased. Eliza gathered her supplies and turned to leave. At the entrance, she hesitated. Why do you speak English so well? Know your enemy, he said, eyes closed. I spent 2 years at the white man's school in Carlisle. They tried to strip the Apache out of me. A cold smile touched his mouth. They failed. Outside, the sunlight struck her hard. Eliza felt the weight of what lay ahead. She had been spared slavery, only to become caretaker to a dying legend. A man who had killed countless whites, perhaps even people she once knew. The irony cut deep. Yet as she crossed the camp, she couldn't shake the image of his fever-bright eyes, the hard truth in his voice. Monsters are made, not born. She thought of Bitter Creek burning, of her father's blood slick on her hands, of the casual violence that had ended her life in a single afternoon. Maybe they were all monsters now, shaped by a land that demanded blood just to endure. And maybe, in tending this one, she might learn how to survive herself. The sun climbed higher, scorching the canyon walls. Somewhere above, a hawk screamed its hunting cry. Eliza Crow, shopkeeper's daughter, walked among her enemies with her head held high, knowing she would return twice each day to the wiki up where death waited, wearing the face of legend. By evening, firelight flickered across the walls as Eliza stepped inside again. 3 days had passed since her first encounter with Rook, and each visit felt like entering a cave where some ancient predator lay wounded but watchful. Tonight, the fever had worsened. She saw it in the sheen of sweat coating his skin, heard it in the shallow rasp of his breath. He lay almost motionless, only the slow rise and fall of his massive chest proving life remained. The stink of infection had deepened, blending with sage smoke and the raw scent of the hide walls. Eliza set down her supplies, heated water, clean cloths torn from her own petticoat, and a new poultice Moha had shown her how to prepare, reluctantly. Her hands shook as she knelt. Every time she touched him, the strangeness returned. The heat of his skin, the solid planes of muscle beneath scars that told a lifetime of violence. "You're late," Rook murmured without opening his eyes. "The women kept me working," Eliza replied, dipping a cloth into the warm water. "They worked me grinding corn until my hand split open," Eliza said. "Soft hands don't last long here." She peeled back the old dressing, biting her lip at what she found. The wound looked worse, angrier. Red veins crept farther along his ribs like poisoned streams. The stench turned her stomach, but she steadied herself and began cleaning the skin around it. "This is getting bad?" "Sharp eyes, little rabbit." Even through the pain, his voice carried a hint of mockery. "Maybe you should have been a medicine woman." Eliza pressed the cloth to the infected flesh, harder than strictly necessary. His body tightened, jaw locking, but he made no sound. "A white healer among the Apache?" he went on. "How long do you think you'd last?" "Longer than you'd expect. We honor those who heal." His eyes opened, fixing on her with that unsettling focus. "Honor and trust, though. They're not the same." She worked in silence, aware of his gaze following every movement. Firelight carved his features in shadow and glow, revealing the hard beauty shaped by wind and war. Even now, near death, he carried a dangerous pull that quickened her pulse against her will. "You're afraid of me?" Rook said suddenly. "Shouldn't I be?" "Yes." Simple, unarguable. "But not for the reason you think." Her hands paused. "Then why?" A trace of a smile crossed his mouth. "Because I see you, Eliza Crow. The fire beneath that proper white girl's skin. The part of you that didn't shatter when your world burned." He shifted, swallowing a groan. "That's what should scare you, not my name, but what you might discover about yourself here." She resumed her work, unsettled by his words. "You don't know me." "No." His eyes never left her. "Then why are your hands gentle when you think I'm asleep? Why do you bring extra water when the fever burns hottest? Why do you study my scars with curiosity instead of revulsion?" Heat rushed to her face. "I'm doing what I have to do to survive." "Tell yourself that if it helps." His hand moved fast, closing around her wrist as she reached for the poultice. Despite the fever, his grip was firm, calloused fingers circling her skin like iron. "But we both know there's more." Eliza met his gaze, refusing to show how his touch affected her. "Let go. Make me, little rabbit." The air between them felt charged, like the breath before a storm. She could feel his pulse under her fingers, fast, uneven. This close, she saw flecks of gold in his dark eyes, caught the wild scent of sage beneath sickness. "You're burning up," she said quietly. "Save what strength you have for fighting death, not me." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe approval. He released her wrist slowly, his fingers trailing away in a way that sent a shiver up her spine. "You've got spine," he said. "Good. Spine might keep you breathing after I'm gone. You're not dying on my watch." Eliza applied the poultice with practiced care, ignoring the lingering heat where he'd touched her. "I won't give them that satisfaction. Them or yourself." He closed his eyes as she worked. "Tell me, when this ends, dead or healed, what then? You think they'll just turn you loose?" "I'll survive," she said. "Same way I am now. Survival." He tasted the word like something bitter. "Is that all you want from living?" "It's all I have left." The words came out sharper than she intended, heavy with everything she'd lost. Rook was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. "I was 15 when soldiers came to our winter camp," he said. "They killed my mother, my sisters, took my younger brother to one of their schools. I never saw him again." His eyes fixed on the smoke hole above. "That day, I stopped being a boy. I became something else, shaped by hatred, forged by war." Eliza leaned closer without realizing it, drawn by the rawness in his voice. "What did you become?" "What they needed." His gaze returned to hers. "A weapon, a legend, a monster to frighten white children." A pause, then quieter. "Even monsters get lonely." The admission hung between them, stripped bare. Eliza busied herself with fresh bandages, wrapping them carefully around his torso. Every touch felt magnified. The heat of his skin, the way his breath shifted when her hands passed certain places. Finally, she sat back. "There. Try not to tear it open again." No promises. He struggled to rise. This time, when she moved to help, he didn't wave her away. Her arm slipped around his shoulders to steady him as he leaned forward. For a heartbeat, they were too close. Her chest pressed against his side, his breath brushing warm against her neck. "Water," he said roughly. She reached for the gourd at once, grateful for the excuse to move. He drank long and deep, and she watched the powerful line of his throat work. Everything about him felt excessive. Too large, too strong, a man built for violence and command. And yet, here he was, relying on her, exposed in ways that had nothing to do with wounds. "You should go," he said when he finished, "before someone sees and starts drawing the wrong ideas." "And what ideas would those be?" A sharp smile cut across his face. "That the great Rook has been enchanted by a white woman. That would be inconvenient for both of us." Eliza straightened, gathering her things. "I'm nobody's enchantress." "No," he said, lowering himself back with effort. "You're something far more dangerous." She paused at the entrance. "What's that?" "Unexpected." Outside, the night air cooled her flushed skin. Eliza realized her hands were shaking, not with fear. That would have been easier to name. This was something tighter, coiled low in her belly, making her skin feel stretched and alive. She pressed her palms to her cheeks, trying to calm herself. This was madness. He was her enemy, her captor, a man who had killed her people. And yet, when he looked at her with those knowing eyes, when he spoke of loneliness and monsters, something in her answered back. They were both shaped by loss, hardened by necessity. The camp lay quiet as she returned to the women's area. Most fires had burned down to embers, and stars crowded the sky like scattered silver. She thought of Rook in his wiki-up, fighting death with the same stubborn will he once carried into battle. Tomorrow she would return. She would place her hands on that scarred body again, breathe the same air, and feel that dangerous pull tighten. Eliza Crow, raised to fear and despise the Apache, was tending their greatest warrior. More than that, she was beginning to see him not as a symbol or a terror, but as a man, complex, dangerous, magnetic, who looked at her as if he could see straight through her defenses. She touched her wrist where he had held her, the ghost of his grip still lingering. What you might discover about yourself here. Maybe that was the true danger, not Rook himself, but what he stirred awake inside her. The wild thing beneath her careful upbringing, waiting for a reason to rise. Wrapped in her thin blanket, surrounded by the soft breathing of the other women, Eliza wondered whether she had the strength to resist that call, or whether she even wanted to. The canyon wind sang through the dark. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled. Alone, defiant, unbroken, Eliza closed her eyes and dreamed of fever-bright eyes and scarred hands, of a monsters who spoke of loneliness, and of the thin line between captor and captive, when both were bound by fate. The morning routine settled into her bones after 2 weeks. Eliza heated water over the communal fire, enduring the cold stares of Apache women, then walked toward Rook's wiki up as the rising sun painted the canyon walls gold. Each morning, she expected to find him dead. Each morning, he proved her wrong. "You're humming," he said as she entered, eyes still closed. She stopped short, surprised. "My mother's lullaby. She used to—" Her jaw tightened, and she cut herself off. Used to what? His eyes opened, curious rather than mocking. "Nothing. Let me see the wound. Touchy today." He shifted to give her room. "Did Moha work you too hard again?" She began unwrapping the bandages with practiced care. The wound, though still serious, had improved. The angry redness had faded, the flesh less swollen. "She had me scraping hides until midnight," Eliza said. "My hands are raw. Let me see." "The wound first?" I said. "Let me see." His tone allowed no refusal. Reluctantly, she held out her hands. Her palms were blistered and torn from the rough labor. Rook took them in his own, turning them carefully, his touch unexpectedly gentle. His thumbs brushed the damaged skin, and Eliza fought the urge to pull away. "Small hands," he murmured. "Not meant for this kind of work." "They'll harden," she said. "Like everything else." He released her slowly. "You're changing, little rabbit. I can see it in how you stand, how you move. Less fear, more fire." Eliza returned to tending his wound, ignoring the lingering heat in her hands. "Maybe I'm just too tired to be afraid." "No," he said. "It's more than that." He watched her closely as she worked. "Tell me about the lullaby. Why do you care?" "Because you almost shared it, and then pulled back." "Now I'm curious." Eliza let out a slow breath, already familiar with his persistence. "My mother sang it when I was frightened. Thunder, night terrors." She hesitated, then added quietly, "Whenever my father came home drunk from the saloon." She hadn't meant to say that. Rook's gaze sharpened. "He struck you?" "Sometimes. My mother more often." Eliza kept her eyes on her work. He wasn't cruel by nature, just weak. The frontier broke him in ways it didn't break her. "And you?" Rook asked. "Did it break you?" Eliza paused. "I thought it had, when your warriors burned my world." She met his eyes, but maybe it only uncovered what was already there. The strong endure, the weak fall. His tone held no judgment. "That's the way of it." "And your mother?" he asked. "I lost her 3 winters ago." Eliza's throat tightened. She died singing that lullaby to a little girl in the sick house. Even at the end, she thought of others. Rook was silent a moment. "She sounds like a warrior." "She was." Eliza blinked back tears. "She was everything I'm not." "You diminish yourself." He caught her hand as she reached for the poultice. "You kept me breathing when my own people expected me to fade. You face every dawn in enemy ground, and you don't break." He held her gaze. "Your mother would be proud." The sincerity undid her. A tear slipped free, trailing down her cheek. Rook lifted a hand, and caught it with a gentleness that didn't belong to hands known for killing. "Warriors don't cry," Eliza said lightly. "The best ones do." He brushed his finger to his lips, tasting the tear. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that her breath snagged. "Salt," he murmured, "and grief, and strength." "You're fevered," Eliza said quickly. "My fever broke 3 days ago." His dark eyes didn't leave hers. "You know that. Just as you know why you find reasons to linger." Heat flooded her face. "I don't. Yesterday you rewrapped a bandage that needed no fixing. The day before, you traced my scars when you thought I slept." His voice dropped. "Do you think I don't feel it? The pull between us?" Eliza drew back, heart pounding. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" He sat up with little effort, closing the distance. "Then why does your breath change when I'm near? Why do you lean into my touch even as you pretend to step away?" "Because I'm human," she said, flustered. "And you're—" She faltered. "You're overwhelming." "That doesn't make it meaningless." His fingers hovered at her jaw. "In my people's belief, spirits sometimes bind unlikely souls. Enemy to enemy," he added softly. "Iron sharpening iron." Eliza should have moved, should have reminded him of who they were to each other. Instead, she leaned into his touch, eyes closing. His thumb traced her cheekbone, the calluses unmistakable. Proof of a life spent holding weapons. "This is madness," she whispered. "Yes." His hand slid into her hair, pins loosening and falling. Beautiful madness. A sound outside snapped them apart. Moha entered with the morning medicine. Her sharp eyes took in Eliza's flushed face, Rook's position, the pins scattered on the ground. She spoke sharply in Apache. Rook answered calmly, though Eliza heard the steel beneath it. Moha's scowl deepened. She set the medicine down with unnecessary force and left. "What did she say?" Eliza asked, hastily gathering her pins. "Nothing worth carrying," he said, easing back down. Tension lined his shoulders. "You should go. Come back this evening, as usual." "Rook, go, Eliza." He used her name with care, command and plea braided together. She fled, hair half undone, heart racing like a spooked horse. Eyes followed her through the camp, knowing looks, murmurs. Had everyone seen what she'd refused to name? The dangerous attraction growing stronger by the day. She spent the morning grinding corn with a hard, punishing rhythm, taking her confusion out on the grain. Mabel Knox worked beside her, thin and quiet since being claimed as a wife by a young warrior. The girl rarely spoke now, her spirit dimming by degrees. "He's going to get you killed," Mabel said suddenly, not lifting her eyes. Eliza stilled. "I don't know what you mean." "Everyone already knows. The way you look at him. The way he waits for you." Mabel Knox's voice sounded empty, worn thin. "They're talking," she went on. "Some say you've put a spell on him. Others say he's taken you without saying the words out loud." "No one's taken anyone," Eliza Crow said firmly. "I'm only caring for his wounds." Mabel finally lifted her eyes. They looked far older than her years. "My grandfather used to say you don't store fire beside powder. You're fire, Eliza, and he's worse than powder." Before Eliza could answer, a disturbance rolled through the camp. Warriors were returning at speed, driving stolen horses and pack mules burdened with goods. But something was wrong. Several men were injured. One horse dragged a body behind it. People rushed forward, voices breaking into shouts and cries. Eliza caught enough of the words now to understand. Soldiers, ambush, death. The body belonged to Van. well-liked among the younger warriors. By evening, the camp lay under a heavy shadow. As Eliza approached Rook's wickiup, drums began to sound. Slow, deep, nothing like celebration. This was mourning and a vow. Rook was sitting upright when she entered, dressed for the first time since she'd begun tending him. His war shirt was worked with bead and quill, his hair freshly braided. Despite the careful way he moved, he looked every bit the legend. "You shouldn't be up," Eliza said. "My people must see strength," he replied, "not weakness." He checked his rifle, movement steady, practiced. "Van was my cousin's son. A good warrior, too young." "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Blood for blood." He glanced at her. "That has always been the way." Then his gaze sharpened. "You should know. Some say the soldiers were hunting captives, looking for you and the others." Eliza's stomach twisted. Were they? Does it matter? He set the rifle aside. The end is the same. "Come here." She approached cautiously. He reached into a leather pouch and drew out a necklace strung with blue stones, carefully shaped and polished. "Wear this," he said. "It marks you as under my protection." His urgency was unmistakable. "There is talk. Some want the captives killed in return." Eliza's fingers trembled as she accepted the necklace. "And the others? Mabel?" His jaw tightened. "I can't shield everyone." "But you can shield me." The bitterness slipped out before she could stop it. "Why?" she asked. "Because of this morning." His voice dropped. "Because of your mind. Because you did not break." The words settled between them, heavy as stone. "Whether we wanted it or not," he continued, "you became mine when you refused to bow." "I belong to no one," Eliza said, fastening the necklace. The stones felt cold against her throat, far heavier than their size. "No," he agreed, rising slowly. Even injured, he towered over her. "But you are under my protection now." "That isn't ownership," she said. "No, it's complicated." His fingers brushed the stones at her neck, barely touching skin. "Everything here is." Outside, the drums grew louder. "Tomorrow there will be council," he said. "Wear this. Stay with the women. Don't draw attention. And you?" "I'll do what I must." His hand fell. "For all my people." The weight of that all caught in her chest. "I should go," she said. "Yes." He paused, then caught her hand. "Eliza, be careful. Not everyone accepts this." She squeezed his fingers once and pulled away. As she left the wickiup, the blue stones burned against her skin, branding her as something she didn't yet understand. Protected, marked, bound to a man meant to be her enemy. Now something far more dangerous. Someone who mattered. The drums carried on deep into the night. Eliza lay awake, fingers resting on the necklace, wondering how tending a wound had led her here. Tomorrow would bring reckoning, choices, risk, but tonight she was suspended between worlds, claimed by neither, yet no longer lost. And for the first time since Bitter Creek burned, that did not feel like a curse. It felt like the beginning of something alive. Eliza Crow pressed herself against the rough bark of a juniper, fully aware that being here could cost her life. And knowing she couldn't stay away, the blue stones at her throat felt cold as river ice. From her hiding place, she could see the council ring clearly. Elders, warriors, and clan mothers gathered in a solemn circle. Rook sat among them. Despite his recent illness, his presence held the space. Firelight rippled over his features, shaping him into something half man, half legend. The silver-haired chief, Iron Fox, she had learned, spoke at length. Eliza understood some Apache now, but the formal language of counsel escaped her. Still, she grasped enough, gestures toward the east, where soldiers waited. Repeated mention of blood owed, hands drifting to weapons as voices sharpened. Then the tone shifted. A younger warrior rose, pointing straight at Rook, his words tight with fury. Eliza caught fragments she knew, weak, enchanted, white woman. Cold spread through her as more voices joined in, some defending, others accusing. Rook stood. Silence fell, clean and sharp. When he spoke, his voice carried across the fire with quiet authority. He touched his chest, still healing, then gestured to the scars that mapped his life. Eliza had learned that each mark carried a story known to the people. His words grew stronger. Then she heard her name, Eliza Crow. The council erupted. Warriors sprang to their feet, voices crashing together. Iron Fox raised a hand for order, but the fracture had already opened. Eliza understood with sudden clarity. She had become a fault line, a weakness in their greatest warrior that some now saw as a danger to the tribe. A hand clamped onto her shoulder. Eliza nearly cried out, but another hand covered her mouth. She found herself staring into the weathered face of Sina, Iron Fox's sister, a warrior whose reputation rivaled Rook's own. "Foolish girl?" Sina whispered in accented English. "Come." Eliza had no choice. Sina guided her away from the council, moving like smoke through the dark. They stopped at a wiki upset apart from the others, and Sina pushed her inside. "You watch what you should not," Sina said, lighting a small fire. In the flicker, Eliza saw black war paint striping the woman's sharp cheekbones. "I needed to see you, to understand how one woman divides us." Sina's eyes were hard as obsidian. "You wear his protection. Protection always has a price." Eliza touched the necklace without thinking. "I didn't ask for this." "No. Spirits rarely ask." Sina studied her closely. "Do you know what Rook is to us?" "A great warrior." "More." Sina fed the fire. "He carries the breath of our ancestors. In battle he becomes more than a man. He becomes our rage given shape." Her gaze held Eliza. "That is why no Apache woman may see his weakness. To see him vulnerable is to see our people vulnerable." "But I'm not Apache." "Exactly. You were nothing. That is why you could tend him without breaking the law." Sina's smile cut sharp. "But now you wear his mark. Now you are something else." "Not Apache. Not white," Eliza said. "Something between. I don't understand." When Rook was a child, barely walking, the spirits marked him. Sina said quietly. "Lightning struck near his cradle and spared him. Eagles circled our camp for 7 days. The medicine men said he would be our sword and shield." She paused, choosing her words. "They also said his path would be strange, that he would meet his equal in enemy ground." Eliza's mouth went dry. "You think I'm—" "I think nothing," Sina said. "I see." She leaned closer. "I see how he watches for you, how his fever broke only after you came, how he speaks your name in council like both prayer and curse." "This is madness," Eliza said. "I'm his prisoner, nothing more." "If you were nothing," Sina replied evenly, "Brock would not have called for your death tonight. If you were nothing, Rook would not risk everything to mark you protected." Eliza stood abruptly, pacing the tight space. "Then I should leave, escape, remove myself." "You would not survive past the canyons," Sina said calmly. "And Rook would follow." Eliza stopped. "He's just a man." But even she heard the doubt in her voice. "Is he?" Sina rose, tall despite her years. Tomorrow, he rides to prove he is still the weapon we need. The fire cracked softly. And when he walks the warpath, Sina said, mountains listen. Wounded and not yet whole, he would still ride. Because Brock questioned him. Because your presence planted doubt where none had lived before. Sina paused at the entrance, her voice low. If he dies tomorrow, it will be because of you. She turned back once more. If he lives, it will also be because of you. That is the weight of the stones you wear. Then she was gone, leaving Eliza alone with that terrible truth. The fire popped softly. Outside, the council drums shifted into a new cadence. One Eliza recognized now. War. By first light, Rook would ride out, still healing, to meet whatever waited in the desert, because questions about his strength could not be allowed to stand. Eliza staggered from the wickiup, lungs aching for air. The camp hummed despite the hour. Warriors readied blades and rifles. Women bundled supplies. Children were hurried toward shelter. Eliza found herself moving toward Rook's dwelling, pulled by a need she couldn't name. He was outside, tightening the cinch on a powerful black stallion. Clad in full war dress, he looked torn from nightmare or dream. Eagle feathers braided into his hair, paint stark across his face, patterns alive in the firelight. Weapons rested at his belt as if they belonged there. You shouldn't be here, he said without turning. Sina told me, Eliza replied. About tomorrow. About why you have to go. Sina speaks too freely. He checked the saddle again. Go back to the women, Eliza. This is madness. You're barely healed. He turned, and the words died in her throat. This was not the man who had teased her, who had caught her tears and spoken of loneliness. This was the legend, the weapon Sina had named. His eyes held death. Do you know what they call me in your tongue? His voice was colder now, cut from iron. Soul taker, because I don't only kill the body, I take everything. He stepped closer, the scent of paint and leather, sage and steel filling her senses. I am very good at what I do, Eliza Crow. Tomorrow, I remind them why. You could die? Yes. He leaned in. Would you mourn me, little rabbit? The question hung sharp between them. Tears stung Eliza's eyes, fear and anger tangling with something deeper. Don't do this, she said. Not for pride, not for them. Everything tomorrow is for you. His hand brushed the necklace at her throat. So they remember that questioning me costs blood. So they see that Rook chooses what Rook wants, and not even the spirits will change it. So you remain safe when I'm gone. When you're gone? His smile cut both sad and sharp. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. Either I die and prove Brock right, or I live and everything changes. The man who rides out won't be the one who returns. Eliza seized his hand. Then don't go. We could run, she whispered. Hide. Pretend we are other than what we are. He lifted her hand to his lips, the tenderness of it aching against the armor of war. I am Apache. You are white. Tomorrow we remind the world why that matters, and why perhaps it doesn't. A war cry rose from the gathered fighters. Rook's head turned toward it. When he looked back, the man receded, and the legend took hold. Go, he said. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow brings what it brings. She didn't let go. Promise me something. What? Don't die for pride. If you must die, die for something better. His free hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone in a gesture that had become painfully familiar. And what would be better, Eliza Crow? Live for it, she whispered. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps recognition. Then he pulled away and mounted in one smooth motion. Watch the sunrise, he said. If the eagles circle 3 times, you'll know I live. If they don't, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. With a final look that seemed to memorize her face, he rode toward the assembling warriors, leaving Eliza alone with the cold weight of blue stones at her throat, and the heavier weight of knowing. She loved him, the enemy, the savage, the man who embodied everything that had burned her world to ash. She loved his contradictions, his terrible gentleness, the loneliness that mirrored her own. It was impossible, forbidden, likely fatal, and utterly true. The war party rode out before dawn, their cries echoing along the canyon walls like vows of violence. Eliza Crow stood among the women, wearing Rook's mark, feeling the cross-current of respect and resentment brush her skin. As the sun crested the horizon, staining the land with blood and gold, she searched the sky. One eagle wheeled, then a second. Eliza drew a breath and held it, fingers tight around the blue stones at her throat, waiting for the third, waiting for the sign that would tell her whether her impossible love might become more than a beautiful, lethal dream. The morning wind carried distant gunfire, thin and sharp, and still she waited, finally understanding what Sina had meant. She stood between worlds now, claimed by neither, bound to both. The weight of it should have crushed her. Instead, she straightened, lifted her chin, and watched the sky with the patience of a woman who had found something worth waiting for. The third eagle never came. Eliza remained until her legs went numb, until the sun climbed and the women drifted back to their work, casting her glances that held pity or grim satisfaction. 2 eagles had circled and vanished beyond the canyon rim. The silence that followed felt like a breath held before a scream. Moha approached as Eliza finally sank to her knees. "You wait for nothing," the old woman said, not unkindly. "Warriors know death. It is their bride, their sister. Today, perhaps, Rook embraces her." "He's not dead," Eliza said. Her voice came out raw. "I would know. I would feel it." Moha made a small, dismissive sound, then helped Eliza to her feet. "Come. There is work. Work steadies a bleeding heart." But Eliza could not focus on grinding corn or scraping hides. Her hands moved by habit while her mind replayed every moment. His fever-bright eyes, the way he spoke her name like a prayer. The last look that seemed to carve her face into memory. Near midday, a stir ran through the camp. Riders approached, but not the war party. Eliza recognized Yarrow, his horse lathered with sweat. He spoke quickly to the gathering crowd, hands cutting the air. Eliza caught fragments. Ambush, soldiers, blood, many dead. "Which ones?" someone shouted. "Who lives?" Yarrow began to name them. Each name brought wails from women, stiff nods from men. Eliza held her breath. Rook's name did not come, not among the living, not among the dead. "Where is Rook?" Iron Fox's voice split the rising panic. Yarrow's expression shifted. Uneasy, fearful, uncertain, he spoke at length. Eliza understood enough to piece it together. The war party ambushed by soldiers with repeating rifles, pinned and outnumbered. Then Rook had done something else. Yarrow's gestures told it plainly. Transformation, becoming more than a man. Rook had charged alone, drawing fire, buying escape. "Where is he now?" Iron Fox pressed. Yarrow pointed toward the distant mountains. "Alone, wounded, hunted." He hesitated. "Alive, when last seen." The camp erupted. Some demanded a rescue, others called it suicide. Brack argued loudly that Rook had chosen his path. that a true warrior returned or died, needing no saving like a child. Eliza moved before thought caught up. She seized Yarrow's arm. "Where?" she demanded in her broken Apache. "Which mountain? Which path?" Yarrow looked at her with surprise, then something like respect. He pointed northeast, speaking slowly so she could follow. Devil's Backbone. Bad trail even for the strong, wounded and chased, near impossible. "You mean to go after him?" Sina appeared at Eliza's side, reading her intent without effort. "Someone must," Eliza said. "A white woman?" Sina's tone was flat. "Alone? You would die before clearing the valley." Eliza touched the blue stones at her throat. "Then I die, but I will not stand here waiting for eagles that never come." Sina studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Perhaps the spirits knew after all. She turned to a nearby warrior. "Bring 2 horses, good ones, and supplies for the mountains." "Sina, no," Iron Fox said sharply. "You cannot." "I am old, brother," Sina replied, calm and final. "My battles are nearly done. Let me choose this last one." Within the hour, Eliza sat astride a sturdy pinto, following Sina through paths she would never have found alone. The older woman rode as if born to it, setting a pace that jarred Eliza's bones and hate the ground with ruthless speed. They rode in silence through the heat, stopping only to water the horses. As shadows lengthened, Sina finally spoke. "Do you know what you risk?" "Death," Eliza said. "More than that." Sina glanced back. "If soldiers find you with me, they will say you turned traitor." Eliza tightened her grip on the reins and rode on. "Your own people will turn on you. They're not my people anymore." The words surprised Eliza Crow with how true they felt. "I don't know what I am now." "You are what love makes you." Sina's voice held no mockery. "It reshapes us the way rivers shape stone, not gently, but honestly." They climbed higher as darkness thickened, following a trail only Sina seemed able to read. Desert sounds faded into mountain silence, broken only by hooves striking stone. Cold crept into Eliza's hands until they went numb, but she didn't complain. Just before dawn, Sina reined in sharply and raised a hand. They dismounted. In the gray light, both women saw it, blood on the rocks, still wet. Too much blood. They left the horses tied below and followed the trail on foot. It led to a shallow rock overhang, barely a cave. And there, slumped against the stone wall, was Rook. Eliza's heart stopped, then slammed back to life. He was conscious, rifle across his lap. War paint streaked with sweat and blood. A fresh wound bled along his side. Gunshot by the look of it. His eyes tracked them warily until recognition broke through. "I'm dreaming," he rasped, "or I'm dying. Either way, you're not real." Eliza dropped beside him, hands already moving, real enough to be furious with you. "You said 3 eagles? I watched the sky." "Eagles don't lie." His hand closed around hers, weak, desperate. "You shouldn't be here." "The soldiers are following the wrong trail," Sina cut in. "I laid false sign 2 miles back. They'll realize soon. We must move." "I can't." Rook's jaw tightened. The bullet's still inside. Every step drives it deeper. Sina was already unpacking, knife, herbs, cloth. "You'll have to do it," she said to Eliza. "My hands shake now. I'll guide you." I can't." "Then he dies." Sina's tone was flat. "Choose." Eliza looked at Rook. Not the legend, not the weapon, but the man who had caught her tears, spoken of loneliness, ridden into war to shield her. Her hands steadied. "Tell me what to do." The hour that followed stretched into eternity. Under Sina's clipped instructions, Eliza cut into Rook's flesh while he bit down on leather to silence himself. His body went rigid, muscles locking, but he never cried out. Blood coated Eliza's hands. She didn't falter. When she finally drew the bullet free, Rook's head fell back, unconscious. Terror seized her, then his chest rose, fell, rose again. "Good," Sina said, already preparing poultices. "You have steady hands and a steadier heart." They cleaned and bound the wound together. Eliza noticed more injuries. Bruises, cuts, a deep gash along his thigh. Whatever had happened in the ambush, Rook had paid dearly for his people's escape. "The stories will say he became a spirit warrior," Sina murmured. "That bullets couldn't touch him, that he fought like 10 men. Stories always grow." "What really happened?" Eliza asked. "A man did what was required." Sina tied off the bandage. "Sometimes that is miracle enough." Rook stirred as the sun climbed. His eyes found Eliza first, confusion giving way to something deeper. "You came for me. Someone had to," she tried lightly, though her voice broke. "You Apache have no sense of self-preservation." "And you whites have too much," he murmured. His hand found hers, gripping stronger than she expected. "Why, Eliza? Why risk everything?" She thought of many answers. The blue stones, simple decency, love itself. Instead, she spoke the truth. "Because you would have come for me." Something in him gave way, walls collapsing like sand. "Eliza, soldiers!" Sina snapped. She stood at the cave mouth, scanning the valley. 6, maybe 7, an hour out. No more. Rook struggled to sit. "Leave me. Take Eliza and—" "No." Eliza's voice cut clean and sharp. "We all leave, or no one does. I can't ride." "Then you ride with me." Her mind was already racing. "Sina, is there another way? A path the soldiers won't expect?" Sina's eyes gleamed. "There is, but it will cost." Eliza didn't hesitate. "Everything already has." The older woman's smile was grim. "There is always another way, if you are willing to pay for it. North, through the devil's throat." "Dangerous, even when a man is whole," Eliza said. "That is why they will not follow," Sina replied. "Then that is our road." They moved fast, scrubbing away every trace of their presence. Getting Rook into the saddle was torture. His face went ashen, jaw locked, breath torn short. But he did it. Eliza swung up behind him, arms circling his waist to keep him steady, feeling each ragged rise and fall of his chest. "This is madness," he muttered as they started up the perilous climb. "Yes," Eliza said, pressing her cheek to his back. "Beautiful madness. Your words, remember?" He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. His hand covered hers where it rested over his heart, and she felt the steady thump beneath her palm. Alive. Against every odd. They were alive. The path Sina chose was a nightmare. Knife-thin ledges over dizzying drops, loose stones skittering into the void with every misstep. Barely passable, but horses trained for war would balk at it. Hours bled together in a haze of fear and focus. Eliza's world shrank to one purpose: keeping Rook upright, reading his breathing, trusting Sina's unerring guidance. When they finally descended into a hidden basin she had never known existed, the sun was sinking again. "We rest here," Sina said. "Tomorrow, if he lives, we push on to the winter camp." That night, while Rook slept in uneasy snatches beside a small fire, Eliza kept watch. She thought of paths chosen and prices paid, of changes that could never be undone. Firelight caught the blue stones at her throat, and she understood their weight in a new way. She had crossed a line that would not uncross. When she wore his mark, yes. But truly when she held his life in blood-slicked hands, refused to let go. No regrets? Sina asked softly, joining her. Eliza looked at Rook's face, peaceful now in sleep, though she knew the pain waiting beneath. None, she said, and meant it. Good. Sina stared into the flames. The way ahead is harder than the road behind. But you are stronger than you think, Eliza Crow. Strong enough for what comes. Eliza did not ask what she meant. Tomorrow would answer in its own way. Tonight, Rook lived. She had found a courage she hadn't known she possessed. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled, wild, free, unafraid. Eliza touched the stones once more and settled into the long vigil. Guardian now, as he had been for her. The circle closed, the bond forged in blood and choice and something deeper still. Strong enough? Sena had said. As the stars wheeled overhead and Rook's breathing steadied beside her, Eliza began to believe it. The dust on the horizon spoke of death on the move. Eliza stood on a ridge above the winter camp, watching a column of cavalry push through the valley below. 300 men, maybe more. Their blue coats bruised the pale desert. They found us, Iron Fox said at her side, inevitability heavy in his voice. Someone talked, someone always does. Below, the camp moved with grim order. Women gathered children, warriors checked weapons, elders prepared to flee or to stand, according to what strength remained. Eliza had seen this dance before. Now she stood on the other side of it, dress patched and worn, skin bronzed by sun, Rook's blue stones cool at her throat. "Where is he?" she asked, though she knew. Iron Fox pointed toward the council fire. Where he must be. She could see him even from here, tall, commanding, fully healed after 2 months of her care. The wound that should have ended him was now only another scar among many. The deeper wounds, the ones that showed only in quiet moments, were hers to know. I should go to him. No. Iron Fox's hand closed on her arm, gentle, firm. Not now. He must be Rook the warrior, not the man who... He searched, then stopped. Not the man who looks at you as if you hung the stars. A scout thundered into camp, horse white with foam. His message was clear before words came. The soldiers knew exactly where they were. No accident. Planned. Coordinated. They'll strike at dawn. Eliza's mind raced. The captives, she said suddenly. The white captives. That's why they're here. Someone escaped, made it back. Iron Fox's face was stone. Does it matter? They come. We fight. Some die. The wheel turns as it always has. But Eliza Crow was already moving, away from Rook, away from the council fire, toward the wickiup where she knew Mabel Knox was kept. She found the girl hurriedly packing her few possessions, hands shaking, face hollowed by months of hunger and fear. It was you, Eliza said without preface. You got word out somehow. Mabel's hands stilled. When she looked up, there was no guilt in her eyes, only bone-deep exhaustion. My husband left me alone for 3 days, she said flatly. I found a prospector, gave him my mother's ring to carry a message. People will die, Eliza said, because of this. Because I want to live? Mabel's voice cracked. Not everyone is like you, Eliza. Not everyone can forget what they are, where they come from. She gestured helplessly at Eliza's weathered clothes, sun-dark skin, the way she stood now. Not everyone can fall in love with this. Rage and pity collided in Eliza's chest. Before she could answer, drums sounded. not the war drums. A call. The camp gathered in the central clearing. Rook stood with the war chiefs, but his eyes found Eliza at once. What she saw there stole her breath. Not anger, not fear, but a ruthless calm. Iron Fox raised his hand for silence. He spoke in Apache, then repeated in Spanish for those who understood. The soldiers come for their people. They believe we will fight to keep them. Murmurs rippled. Brack stepped forward. Protest etched on his face, but Rook's hand on his shoulder stilled him. They are wrong, Iron Fox continued. Any white captive who wishes to leave may go. His voice hardened. They go as they are. No horses, no supplies beyond what they carry. If they reach the soldiers, they live. If the desert takes them, he shrugged. Eliza felt the ground tilt. Freedom shaped like exile. Mercy sharpened into a test. Mabel and the other captives were already moving, hope flaring. Then Iron Fox spoke again. Eliza Crow. The clearing fell silent. He looked directly at her. You are free to go. Every eye turned. Eliza felt the weight of choice slam down like stone. She could leave, return to soldiers, safety, the ghost of a former life. Her gaze found Rook. His face was carved from rock, revealing nothing. Only his clenched hand betrayed him. He would let her go. He would honor her choice. That decided everything. Eliza stepped forward and unfastened the blue stones from her throat. The crowd held its breath. She crossed to Mabel and pressed the necklace into her hands. Take this, Eliza said quietly. Show it to the soldiers. Tell them, her voice caught. Tell them Eliza Crow died months ago in the raid. Eliza, no, Mabel whispered. You can't stay. You can come home. I am home. The words came out steady. This is my choice. Go, live, be free. But Eliza Crow died at Bitter Creek. She turned and walked back through the circle, eyes burning her skin. When she reached Rook, she stopped and lifted her chin. If you will have me, she said in Apache, loud enough for all to hear, I choose to stay. Something cracked in Rook's composure. He cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone in that familiar, devastating way. You impossible woman, he murmured in English for her alone, then louder in Apache. She is mine. I claim her before all. If any challenge this, speak now. No one did. Even Brack stayed silent, thunder in his face. Iron Fox nodded once. Then it is done. The white woman, Eliza Crow, is dead. He studied her with something like approval. Who stands before us now? Eliza searched herself. Daughter, shopkeeper, captive, healer. None fit anymore. She lifted her chin, and at last she knew. She looked at Rook, drew strength from the pride burning in his eyes, and spoke the name that had followed her in whispers for weeks. Walks between worlds, she said clearly. I am walks between worlds. A ripple passed through the gathering. Surprise, then acceptance, even respect. It was a warrior's name, a name that acknowledged what she had become. The captives departed as the sun kissed the horizon, small figures staggering into the desert toward the soldiers' lines. Eliza Crow watched them go. Mabel Knox clutching the blue stones, and felt a chapter of her life close with final certainty. Regrets? Rook asked quietly at her side. No. She turned to face him. But what now? The soldiers won't turn back just because you release them. They'll still attack. Yes. His jaw tightened. Which is why we won't be here when they do. The camp was already shifting, an exodus practiced through generations. By full dark, they would be gone, melted into the mountains like smoke, leaving only empty wiki-ups for the soldiers to find. And after? Eliza asked. Tomorrow will bring what it brings? Rook drew her close. She felt the tension in him, coiled and unrelenting. Tonight you chose us, he said. You chose me. That was enough. But she heard the truth beneath his words. The war was growing. The army would not stop until the Apache were destroyed or forced into reservations. Time was running out, and she had bound herself to a world under siege. As if sensing her thoughts, Rook spoke again. I won't ask you to watch me die. When the end comes, and it will come, I'll see you somewhere safe. No. The word cut clean. You don't get to decide that for me. Not anymore. She pulled back to meet his eyes. I didn't stay to be protected, Rook. I stayed to stand beside you. He shook his head slightly. You don't understand what you're saying. When the final war comes, she said steadily, touching the scar along his jaw, we face it together. I've made my choice. Don't dishonor it by trying to save me from it. He caught her hand and pressed it against his face. You humble me, he said quietly. A warrior who has never feared battle is terrified of failing you. Then don't fail me, she said, managing a small smile. Live, fight if you must. But live, that's all I ask. The exodus began under full darkness. Eliza rode beside Rook, no longer a captive, not quite Apache. Something new, something between. Behind them, the abandoned camp waited for soldiers who would find only dust and shadows. Somewhere in the night, Mabel and the others struggled toward salvation or death. Eliza whispered a prayer for them, and for the life she might have lived had she chosen differently. But when Rook's hand found hers in the dark, when the tribe moved like spirits through land that had become home, she knew she was where she belonged. War would come. Blood would be spilled. Their world would likely burn. But tonight she rode with her chosen people, with the man who taught her that enemy and beloved could be the same. That home was not a place, but a decision renewed each day. Eliza Crow was dead. In her place rode Walks Between Worlds, and she did not look back. The mountains swallowed them whole. At dawn, the soldiers found only empty dwellings and wind whispering through abandoned wiki-ups. High in hidden valleys, a woman who had found herself by losing everything rode toward an uncertain future, her hand in that of a legend, her heart, at last, free. The battle came with the spring rains, turning the valley into mud and blood. Eliza pressed herself against a rocky outcrop, her rifle steady despite the chaos below. 3 months had passed since she chose to stay. 3 months of running, hiding, small victories, and heavier losses. Now the running was over. Stay down. Rook's voice carried through the gunfire. He was 20 yards to her left, leading warriors who held the high ground. Even from here, she could see the controlled fury in his movements, the lethal precision that had made him legend. The army had brought everything, cavalry, infantry, even artillery that thundered like angry gods. Against them, the Apache had courage, knowledge of the land, and desperation. It would never be enough. A soldier broke through their line, rifle raised toward fleeing women and children. Eliza didn't hesitate. Her shot took him center mass, and she watched him fall. Once, that sight would have shattered her. Now she felt only grim clarity. This was survival. Nothing more, nothing less. Eliza! She turned at Sina's call. The older woman was waving frantically from behind a shattered rock outcrop. Eliza ran, dropping hard beside her as bullets tore the air overhead. The children! Sina gasped. A dark red stain spread across her side. They're hidden in the cave, she forced out. Someone must hold them. I will. Eliza was already turning, but Sena caught her wrist. No, your place is not there. With shaking fingers, she pressed a small leather pouch into Eliza's palm. For later, when you need strength. Her grip tightened once. Now go to him. Go! Eliza wanted to argue, but the light was already leaving Sena's eyes. The woman who had shown her that strength could wear many faces died as she had lived, thinking of others first. The Apache line was collapsing. Eliza could feel it in the frantic cries, in the way courage bent toward desperation. She fought her way through smoke and bodies, dress torn and soaked with mud and blood, until she reached Rook. He was rallying the last fighters, war paint streaked with sweat, his eyes already carrying the knowledge of defeat. When he saw her, something broke through his iron control. You should have run when I told you to, he said, yanking her behind cover as grape shot shattered stone above them. We've been over this, she snapped, checking her rifle. 3 rounds left. You are impossible, he said, but his hand found hers, squeezing once. Then his voice dropped. Iron Fox is dead. Brack fell an hour ago. When this line breaks, we go with it. No. His tone hardened. You live. You must live. Before she could answer, a bugle sounded. The Ash Canyon troopers were forming ranks for a final sweep. Eliza saw them clearly, rows tightening, bayonets ready, and then Rook did the one thing that froze her blood. He stood, stepped into the open. Colonel Graves, he called in perfect English. I know you're there. I have something you want. The gunfire slowed, stopped. A voice answered. Identify yourself. I am Rook, he said calmly. The one you call the Soul Taker. I have information about your captives. I will speak only to you, alone. No, Eliza whispered, but he was already walking. From the soldiers' line emerged a tall, graying officer with the bearing of a lifetime in uniform. Colonel Graves, the mind behind this campaign. He advanced cautiously, hands visible, eyes sharp. They met between the lines, surrounded by the dead. Eliza couldn't hear their words, but she saw Rook gesture toward the Apache positions, saw the change in Graves's face as he listened. Then Rook turned, his voice carrying across the field. There is a white woman among us, Eliza Crow, taken from Bitter Creek. She lives. She has been my prisoner. The pause before prisoner was slight. Eliza heard it. I will release her, Rook continued, in exchange for safe passage for the surviving women and children. No! The cry tore from her. She broke from cover, running. Rook caught her, iron arms closing around her. Be still, he murmured in Apache. Trust me. One last time. Colonel Graves studied her, her Apache clothing, her sun-darkened skin, the way she clung to Rook. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Miss Crow, he said carefully, have you been harmed? Eliza felt Rook's hands tighten. This was the moment that would echo forever. She could speak the truth, claim her place beside him and die with him within minutes, or... She looked up at Rook, saw what he was asking, saw the love there, the plea for her to live, even without him. Her voice broke. She swallowed and forced the words out. I was held prisoner, forced to serve them. The lie tasted like ash. Please, she said hoarsely. I just want to go home. Something died in Rook's eyes, though his face remained carved from stone. He shoved her gently toward Graves. Take her, and remember your promise. Safe passage for the others. Graves caught her arm. You have my word. The women and children will not be harmed. He looked at Rook with something like respect. And you? I am a warrior, Rook said, straightening. I die as one. But first, I see my people safe. It happened in a breath. A young Apache warrior, wild with grief, saw Graves's grip on Eliza and raised his rifle. Rook moved on instinct, stepping into the line of fire without hesitation. The shot meant for Colonel Graves struck him square in the chest, the impact spinning him into the mud. No! Eliza wrenched free and dropped beside him. Blood spread across his war shirt, dark and terrible, blending with paint and dirt. No, no, no. Her hands shook as she pressed against the wound, useless, desperate. Rook's fingers rose, finding her face. His thumb traced the familiar line along her cheekbone, the way he always did. My choice, he whispered. You live. For both of us. I can't, I won't. You will. His voice was fading, but the authority remained. Because you are stronger than you know. Because our story doesn't end here. He pressed something into her palm, a small carved stone wolf. Remember. Someone shouted for a medic. Soldiers surged forward. The world fractured into noise and motion. But Eliza saw only Rook's face, the light slipping from his dark eyes. I love you, she said in Apache, not caring who heard. I choose you. I will always choose you. His mouth curved into that sharp, beautiful smile. And I choose the fire. Always. His hand fell away. Now go, he breathed. Live. That's an order. Soldiers dragged her back as medics knelt over his still form. She fought them, screaming his name, but there were too many, too strong. The last thing she saw was his body in the mud, surrounded by enemies who would never understand what they had destroyed. Colonel Graves wrapped a blanket around her shoulders when they reached the army line. You're safe now, Miss Crow. It's over. Safe. Over. The words had no meaning. Eliza clutched the carved wolf, felt Sina's pouch still tied at her wrist, and stared back at the battlefield where everything she had chosen lay dying. Ma'am, a young lieutenant said gently, we need to take you to the medical tent. I've been through nothing, Eliza answered. Her voice was empty as winter wind. Because Eliza Crow was already dead, she had died in the mud of that nameless valley, holding the hand of a legend who taught her that love could bloom even in the harshest ground. What remained was something else. Someone else. A woman who would live because she had been commanded to. A woman who would carry the memory of blue stones, fever-bright eyes, a giant's gentleness, and a warrior's final gift. Rain began to fall as they led her away, washing blood into the earth, erasing the last traces of a world that would never return. But in her hand, the carved wolf stayed warm, and in her chest, a fire refused to die. She would live, not because it was easy, not because it was fair, but because he had asked her to. History would record the day as a victory, another step in the breaking of the Apache. Eliza would remember it as the moment she learned that some loves demand everything, and that living on can be the heaviest price of all. And still, she would choose the fire over the ashes. Every day. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso Legal/Disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice, imagery, and drafting, as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.